Hello, my friends. I hope you're all doing very well. We're going to be learning today, just before Shabbat begins, the last chapter of the laws of Brit Mila, and actually with this we will complete the book of love, the second book of the Rambam. So we're going to begin the third chapter. Over here the Rambam talks about what are the proper blessings to say at a Brit Mila. So it begins off by saying that before we do the actual circumcision, the blessing that is said is, "Blessed are you, God, who has commanded us and has sanctified us with his commandments and has commanded us to do the mitzvah of Mila, Brit Mila." Now, that is all in a case where the mohel is doing it, the person who is the circumciser is doing it to someone else's child. But if it is someone who is doing it to his own child, so then the blessing is, and God has commanded us to circumcise your son, the son. In other words, because it's his own child, so therefore he makes the blessing directly on the circumcision of his own child. And then the father of the child says another blessing, whether he is the mohel or not, whether he is the one that's doing the actual cutting or not. He will say another blessing where he says that God has commanded us to bring in the child in the covenant of Abraham, our forefather. And that is a very special blessing that the father of the child will do. And if there are people that are there, the congregants, they will say that the same way you have brought into the covenant, into the Brit, to the covenant with God, so too you should also bring this child to Torah, to marriage, and to good deeds. And that's the way we do a Brit Mila till today. It's the same ritual, the same blessings, and the same texts. From the time of the Rambam, from 1,000 years ago almost. Obviously, that was already taking place from before then. And then the someone it could be anyone. It could be the mohel, the circumciser. It could be the father of the child. It could be someone else. Will make a special blessing, which we say that blessed are you, God, who has sanctified and cherished from the womb, fixed his covenant in his flesh, and sealed his descendants with the sign of the holy covenant. Therefore, as a reward for this circumcision, living God, God has ordained that the beloved of our flesh be saved from the abyss for the sake of his covenant that he has set in our flesh. And that is a special blessing that we say, which we usually say this right before the baby naming, right after the Brit Mila. Usually we do the Brit Mila, and after that we say this above mentioned blessing, and then we make the baby naming, which is obviously a special occasion. And then the father of the child can cite the blessing of Shehecheyanu, thanking God for bringing us to this special occasion. So that is the order of how a Brit Mila works for a baby child, someone who has a baby boy. We make him a Brit Mila. This is how it works. Now, what happens in a case of a person who is becoming Jewish, someone who is a convert? The way it works in regards to him would be that they make the blessing. There's a special blessing that we say that God, who has commanded us to circumcise the converts and to extract from them the blood of the covenant. For were it not for the blood of the covenant, the existence of the heavens and the earth would not be maintained, as it says in the verse in Jeremiah, "If not for the covenant of day and night, I would not have established the laws of heaven and earth." So that is a special blessing which we say regarding the covenant of the Brit Milah, which is such a special fundamental. And that's the special blessing of that is the special blessing that is done at the circumcision of a convert. And if this convert is above the age of a child, so when you say the blessing, you have to make sure that it's in a proper place where we are saying God's name. So we should cover the area, and so that it should be modest. We say the blessing, and only then does the mohel do what he has to do. So, in a case where a convert who has already been circumcised before he became Jewish, so then, as we mentioned, there's a little extraction of just a little drop of blood that is done, which is for the idea of the covenant, that it should be, blood should be, this little drop of blood should be for the idea of a Brit Mila. So the Rambam continues off by saying that the foreskin, which is what we take away at the time of the Brit Mila, is something which is looked upon as a very negative thing, and we should take it off. And the circumcision is such a great thing that it says that Abraham was not called complete until he did the Brit Mila. As it says, we have various verses in the Torah where God says that now that he's doing the Brit Mila, then he will be complete. And if someone tries to take away, their circumcision, or someone who doesn't do a circumcision, so then it's a very negative thing, and it says that they could even not have a place in the world to come. It could be such a terrible thing. And then the Rambam finishes off this chapter, and essentially, this is pretty much the end of this book. He says that, see how great the mitzvah of Brit Milah, of circumcision, is, that the whole Torah, it says the Torah has 3 covenants on the Torah. And Brit Milah, we see that the Torah says 13 times the idea of the covenant. So it's a very, very great idea, very great mitzvah, which God has given to the Jewish people to be in this special covenant. And the Rambam doesn't mention this over here, but I will mention, just as we're finishing off these laws, that although a Brit Milah is for a male, but the Talmud says that a female, a woman who doesn't have to have a Brit Milah, it is as if she has one. In other words, the idea, this covenant, and where we are in this special bond with God, is of course also for women, as it is for all of the Jewish people. So we have completed this chapter, and we have completed pretty much this entire book. And so we will be in touch after Shabbat for the continuation. All the best. Mazel tov.